sisi watu wa jua kali tunaumia juu tunatafutanga riziki kwa hawkers. Na hata tukisema ni kuandamana, si tunaumia, watoto wetu wanaumia.
If government failed to hit their demands, Odinga's message to Kenyans and his supporters is pretty simple. Brace yourself for demonstrations all over the country. The Saba demonstration called by Azimio la Umoja One Kenya party leader Raila Odinga has been characterized with a cloud of tear gas, with demonstrators engaging police in a running battle throughout the better part of the day. Auma Evans for KUTV, Nairobi.
Thank you, Auma Evans, for starting us off with that story. Now, businesses in major cities across the country today remained closed as police countered the Saba protesters with tear gas canisters. Transport along major roads in various cities across the country was also disrupted as protesters burned tires and barricaded the road with stones.
Business activities in Nairobi, Kisumu, Kisii and other major towns came to a standstill as traders closed down their shops in fear of their properties being destroyed. Hundreds of protesters took to the street for the anti-government Saba demonstrations organized by the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition. Thika Superhighway, a major road leading to Nairobi town, was blocked early in the morning as protesters set tire ablaze and threw stones. In Kisumu County, which is the stronghold of opposition leader Raila Odinga, most businesses in the CBD remained closed, while in Kisii County, protesters lit bonfires rendering the Kisii-Kilgoris highway impassable. The Saba protest highlight the growing discontent among a section of the population regarding economic hardships and the perceived government shortcomings. The impact of the Saba protest is felt across major cities, with business closed and transport disrupted. The protesters' demand for change and improvement in living conditions resonate with many citizens. Patrick Udur, KUTV.
Raila Odinga supporters across various counties today responded positively to his call for peaceful protests. The protests, which were meant to pile pressure on the government to repeal the Finance Act 2023, were countered by the police, who lobbed tear gas to disperse the protesters. As our reporter Jacob Okello reports, several activities have been affected in the areas that witnessed this particular protest. Take a look.
Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka and other local Ukambani leaders today led Saba protests in Kathiani Market, Machakos County, while NARC Kenya leader Martha Karua led similar protests in her hometown of Kirinyaga. Vihiga Senator Geoffrey Ososi, former Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya, Roots Party leader George Wajakoya and Eugene Wamalwa were in Luanda area of Vihiga County leading the Western Region Front. In Mombasa, the protesters were dispersed by tear gas wielding police officers. This is despite activists being authorized to organize the protests. In Siaya County, Alego Usoga MP Samuel Atandi, alongside other local leaders, led hundreds of protesters to march through the town streets. Samuel Atandi called on President William Ruto to do away with the Finance Law 2023, which is punitive in his view.
We are here to assert our opposition to the recently enacted Finance Act, which introduced punitive taxes that is going to make the lives of Kenyans difficult, and many Kenyans will not be able to afford the cost of living because of this tax. We are also here to announce that as the people of Siaya, we are declaring that we are opposed to the Finance Act 2023.
Rosemary Ogutu, a woman leader in Siaya, says women and youths are ready to sign the petition to have the president and his government resign to pave way for new leadership.
Mama wa Kenya na vijana tumechoka, na kama itabidi tupige sahihi aende nyumbani tutapiga, manaka tutakufa njaa sababu yake. Maana tunamuonya tutakuwa kwa barabara usiku na mchana mpaka aende nyumbani.
Kisii County also responded to the Raila's call by closing the Kisii-Kilgoris road and lighting bonfires as they demand prices of basic commodities to be reduced by the government. Here again, the police had to use tear gas to disperse protesters and remove stones and tires that had been used to block the road. The situation was similar in Kisumu, where a group of youths gathering in the CBD were dispersed by the police. Jacob Okello, KUTV.
And still in Saba stories, opposition leader Raila Odinga and his Azimio opposition outfit have been called out for always resorting to protests to air their discontent with the Kenya Kwanza government. Tiati Member of Parliament William Kamket has faulted today's protests, saying that several Saba protests have taken place in the past with very little positive impact. The legislator, who was elected on the Azimio ticket but has since jumped ship to join the government, has also implored President Ruto to ignore the opposition and focus on service delivery.
Rais namna hii, tafadhali, hii Saba tulisikia tukiwa primary. Hao watu walifanyia mzee Moi maandamano for 24 years mpaka mzee akaenda retire.
Let's now move on. And the 7th day of July, this Saba Day is set to aside also to celebrate World Kiswahili Language at the Kumi's ground in Nairobi. Lovers of the beautiful Swahili language flooded in Kumi's Hall to officially celebrate this day. Our reporter Caroline Kimwele with more on this.
Swahili and traditional songs symbolize the perfect image of how this day was decorated to be celebrated. It was then followed by reciting of Swahili poems.
Kwa heshima nasimama, kujificha sikubali.
World Kiswahili Language Day has been celebrated for the second time in this country and in the world after being recognized by the United Nations. The second commemoration of the World Kiswahili Language Day highlights the important role played by Kiswahili in the digital landscape.
Lugha ya Kiswahili itaweza kutambulikana katika Umoja wa Mataifa. Kwa hivyo lugha zingine zote zikitambulikana, Kiswahili kitaingishwa na masuala ambayo yanapitishwa katika Umoja wa Mataifa, Kiswahili kitapewa kipaumbele.
And it serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of the linguistic diversity, cultural heritage, and the remarkable opportunity it presents for fostering Pan-Africanism.
The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, celebrates the World Swahili Language Day every 7th of July every year. This special day recognizes the importance of Kiswahili as a language of great cultural and linguistic value.
Leo ni siku kubwa kwetu ambao tunajali Kiswahili, na ni siku ambayo tunaifurahia na kuisherehekea.
Kwa sisi wa Afrika na haswa kwa Kenya, tunapendezwa kwa ajili sasa kuna mwelekeo kwa hii lugha ambayo itatumika kama lugha ya Kiafrika. Ienee mahali popote duniani, ifunzwe mahali popote duniani, na ienee ikuwe ni lugha ambayo itahusika kwa mambo ya biashara, kwa mambo yoyote yale yanayofaa, kama vile lugha zingine za kiulimwengu zinatumika kama Kiingereza, Kifaransa na zinginezo.
Kiswahili enthusiasts were also not left behind in praising this great language.
Tukuze Kiswahili, tuendeleze Kiswahili kwa faida ya taifa letu la Kenya. Umoja tunaotaka, mapenzi tunaotaka, ushirikiano tunaotaka, hatuwezi kuwa na vitu vyote hivyo bila lugha.
Waona wapenzi wa lugha ya Kiswahili ambao wanashughulikia nyanja mbalimbali wakitagusana, kukutana, kujenga ule muamala. Na ni vizuri kwamba ni shughuli ambayo inawaleta watu wote kwa pamoja. Kwa hiyo furaha yangu na hisia kuu kutokana na hafla ya leo ni kwamba Kiswahili kinawaleta pamoja watu kutoka matabaka mbalimbali.
The news manager for KUTV and radio services, Laban Shaban, underscored the significance of Swahili usage and development.
Nashukuru sana kwamba umezungumza nami katika siku adhimu sana na muhimu katika kalenda ambayo imekwisha tokea mara ya pili Kiswahili kinakaramkiwa, kinachangamkiwa kote duniani baada ya Umoja wa Mataifa kuteua Kiswahili na kufanya Kiswahili kuwa na siku yake. Si Kiswahili tu, hadi lugha ya Kiswahili, kwa sababu Kiswahili kuna Uswahili, kuna utamaduni, kuna desturi, kuna mambo mengi sana.
For its history and wide usage, Kiswahili holds the honor of being the first African language to have a special unit with the Directorate of Global Communications at the United Nations. Caroline Kimwele for KUTV.
Kweli, Kiswahili kitukuzwe. Still on education matters, the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms has drafted new education reforms which include discontinuation of schools, classification, retaining of national exams on top of assessment tests, and establishment of low-cost boarding primary schools in marginalized areas. And as Lynette Minor now reports, the proposed reforms could see the current education system revamped.
The Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms, led by Professor Rafael Munavu, has drafted a report with recommendations aimed at changing the landscape of the current education system. According to the report, the Working Party proposes the discontinuation of the present classification of schools, which categorizes national schools, extra-county schools, county schools, and sub-county schools. The new reforms propose schools to be grouped based on the 3 career pathways of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, social science, arts, and sports. The team has also recommended for the retention of the national examination under the competence-based curriculum and for the examination body to be renamed from the current Kenya National Examination Council to the Kenya National Assessment Council. This means that the learners in grade 9 and 12 will sit for national tests administered by the Kenya National Examination Council. Grade 9 learners will fight for 60% in national examinations administered and score a maximum of 40% in school-based assessments. Grade 12 learners will have to scramble for 70% in national examinations, with only 30% for school-based assessments. At grade 12, students will take an examination similar to KCSE, which will carry 70%, and the remaining 30% from the school-based assessments. Another recommendation by the team is for the government to establish low-cost boarding primary schools in marginalized areas and improve the infrastructure in extra-county schools, which are normally affected by shortage of facilities. If these proposals are adopted, the Ministry of Education will be required to be on tours for the next 6 months. Lynette Minor, KUTV.
All right, it's time for us to take our first short break right here on KUTV Primetime News. When we come back, we have an interesting conversation on drug addiction and mental health. It's something you want to listen to because drug addiction and drug abuse is closer to you than you can imagine. We take a short break. We'll be right back in just about a bit.
Unajua umuhimu wa kabeji ama hata mboga ni kwamba ukila inaondoa sumu mwilini.
Siku hizi upeleki tu sio bora mboga, wanataka mboga bora. So ndio sababu nimechagua hizi varieties kwa sababu iko na quality ambayo inahakikisha hata wakati soko imefurika nitakuwa na leverage kwa sababu ya quality ya ile produce ninatoa.
You are watching KUTV Primetime News with Mutegi K. Martin. All right, welcome back to KUTV Primetime News. And as you can see already from your screen, I have a guest. Our guest is already with us. That is Charlene Nyawera, to talk about what I promised you just before we went on a break: drug addiction and mental health. And as I told you before, drug addiction, issues of drug addiction, issues of drug abuse, and you're going to be seeing the difference from the clinical psychologist herself. What's the difference between these particular terms and how they affect our communities? And as we already know, and as we will continue to be informed on what's happening in our communities, issues of drug abuse are with us, and we need to see how we can deal with that as a community. You know, every Friday we're here to discuss things we should do as a community to change the narrative, and to talk about clinical psychologists and how they attack the issue of mental health and drug addiction and the relation between the two. We have Shalini Nyawira once again, who is here to talk about just that. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Martin.
All right. So you're a clinical psychologist at PsychX. Would you kindly tell us what exactly you do in relation to helping people to be stable in terms of their mental health, and more so in relation to drug and substance abuse?
Okay, great. So at PsychX, we are basically interested in ensuring the mental wellness of the public in general. So we do offer psychological services, we do offer life coaching services, and we basically take clients through the process of mental therapy. So we do see them from the initial intake. We conduct psychological assessments. We use our therapeutic approaches up until where we terminate. Yes.
That's amazing. Thank you for that particular introduction. Now we know what you do. So without wasting much time, we have a heavy topic on our hand, a topic that really has affected the communities, not just around in Kenya, but all over the world, the issue of drug abuse and how it affects people so that they're not able to perform 100% mentally and otherwise. And so let's get started. And it takes me back to a place where I've had a number of people in my career and in my social life. You'd hear mostly parents say, sijui kijana wangu alianza kutumia hii vitu lini. Okay? So many parents and many relatives and friends and the people around a person who is later affected by drug addiction cannot be able to tell exactly where it started. And I want us to I want you to help us understand how we can actually help to identify, because a human eye can only see the physical as it is, and so we may not be able to see what's happening on the inside, we may not be able to read the mind, but we're able to see what's happening on the outside. Are there physical signs that can help someone to identify another person who is getting into drugs or is already addicted to drugs?
Right. I think there are different drugs manifest differently on an individual, and I think it's important to note that the different substances of abuse will also have different repercussions long term on an individual, but there are those signs which would cut across majority of the substances that an individual would use. I think one of the things to note is that somebody may experience a shift in their sleeping patterns. So they will probably struggle to fall asleep, or they will fall asleep but they will wake up at weird hours of the night. Also, they may also have an issue with too much sleepiness, or drowsiness as an effect of the substance they are using. Another thing to take note of is possibly weight gain or too much weight loss. And this is caused by a decrease in appetite. So most of the drugs that somebody will consume have an implication on their appetite. So with a decreased appetite, of course, now they will tend to lose a lot of weight. Another thing to take note of is withdrawing or losing interest in social activities. So they will isolate themselves from the general public.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Now, let's take on the same issue. Drugs are typically meant to be used and not to be abused. And so whether we are abusing drugs or using them, certain drugs especially can become addictive. At what point, or how, maybe the question would be, how fast does an individual find themselves in addiction? Because I know you've dealt with people who are trying to now come out of it in rehabilitation. how fast does one sink into this deep pit of drug addiction where they are not able now to control themselves? How fast does it happen? Does it depend on the drug that is being used, or do we just get into it and fall deep into it?
Right. I think there's no specific time frame for, say in 1 year somebody will be addicted following, substance use, because individuals are different. Of course, there's that individual susceptibility to which, someone will find themselves in addiction. Even things like genetic composition can contribute to, how fast or how slow somebody will become addicted. Again, drugs are different, and like I said, their implication on an individual's body is also quite different. So there are those drugs which are highly addictive compared to others. Yeah, so also looking at issues like, for example, the drug that you're consuming, how frequently do you use it? Yeah, again, how much of the substance are you using in a given moment? So those are some of the things I would mention.
All right. Talking of frequency and the amount definitely of the substance being abused in this case, we have drugs of different types and of different variations, even in their own types. You have dealt with these particular cases for such a long time, I believe, and with your organization as well. What's the relation? Because tonight we're talking about drug addiction and mental health. When does drug addiction become a mental health challenge? At what point? Because I can see, maybe if I give an example of myself, I'm not a drug addict, by the way, but I'm just giving an example. It's my first day. I have started consuming this particular product, and then slowly by slowly I become addicted to it. At what point in this particular process does it become a mental health emergency, if I may say?
Okay. It's important to note especially 3 things that would cause you to raise an alarm. And of course, the first thing is there is an issue with impulse control. And what I mean is that you probably have tried to cut down on your drug use, and it has been unsuccessful. Probably even not cutting down, but you've tried to stop completely, but your attempts have been unsuccessful. That is one of the things that you would need to take note of. Then again, the other thing is that there is continued use of the drug despite the negative consequences that come with using the substance. And I'll go ahead to give an example. Say you have been drinking alcohol for 5 years, and over the time you have experienced probably challenges with your health. So you're having issues with your liver, you're having hypertension, and all of these negative consequences you would experience. But still, even in that event, you're not able to discontinue use of the substance. Yeah. Again, another thing to look out for is there is an impairment in your social functioning. And what this looks like is you probably are experiencing low productivity at work. Sometimes you miss work because you're intoxicated. If you're in school, you're probably noticing your grades are not looking so good. And generally your physical well-being is compromised, so you will find you're experiencing frequent infections, your appetite is struggling, you're losing a lot of weight, and all of that.
That's amazing. To get to know how we can actually help these particular people to get out of it, and I'm talking about drug addicts in this case. Now, my other question would be, these people, once you have them in an organization like PsychX, your work is to bring them back to their normal state, if I may. And as you have mentioned, there are things that happen when someone begins to abuse drugs and become addicted to drugs. They get away from the normal social life and they withdraw to themselves, and a number of times they also join other people of the same habits, but there's some sense of loneliness, and there's some sense of this one person becoming an island and therefore not benefiting from the social environment that is around them. How do we bring them back to the society? Because not everyone will come to PsychX. Someone is listening to you tonight and they're a parent, a guardian, a son, a daughter who is willing to take on a journey to help this person go back to the society and function normally. What do we do to these people to make sure that after they have stopped using these drugs, they still go back to the society and they don't judge themselves for their previous life?
Absolutely. First things first is social support. So if you have probably a relative, a friend who's struggling with an addiction, it is important to accord them the support they need. Should you have any concerns, or maybe should you notice a change in their behavior, it is important to approach them from a place of concern rather than a place of condemnation. Again, another thing that you can do is, have them, enroll in this support groups that are there. We have AA. There are so many support groups that people can join, especially after, probably treatment, and now they're looking to stay free from the substance of abuse. There are many programs that people can enroll to. But ideally, social support is what I would emphasize on. Yes.
All right. Let's go back to our topic today: drug addiction, mental health, and I'm trying to balance them, and I'm having a little challenge, and maybe someone watching at home may be having that same challenge as well. Drug addiction and mental health. Is drug addiction a mental health disorder, or are these two concurrently are working inside a human being as disorders? And how do you treat them? If there are two, how do you treat them? If it's one in the umbrella of mental health, how do you help the person to actually cope with what is ailing inside of them?
Okay. Yes, drug addiction is actually categorized as a mental health disorder.
Okay.
And what that means is that either can cause the other. So you can be addicted to a substance, and ultimately you may develop a mental illness. And you could be struggling with a mental illness, and that leads you to a drug addiction because of how you're coping with the illness. And for situations where we have clients who are having both of them concurrently, we do have an integrated approach. What this means is that we adopt different treatment options that will help us, solve each of the disorders that they are presenting with. So we will have therapeutic approaches that we'll use for the mental illness. We will also incorporate medical remedies. We will incorporate probably interventions that involve the family, interventions that involve the community, basically having all approaches just to make sure we do not leave any stone unturned. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now, as we draw close to the closing of our discussion tonight, how badly are we doing in terms of drug addiction specifically? I know you're out there, you're in the field, you have interacted with many people, and how would you say we are doing? How badly are we doing? And maybe what areas are more affected in Kenya, so we can see where exactly the problem is and how we can tackle it. How badly are we doing as a country, especially?
Right. I think from a study that was conducted in 2017, it says we had about 18% of Kenyans struggling with a substance addiction. And out of the 18%, 12% were struggling with alcohol use disorder. About 6% were struggling with cigarette smoking, 1% cannabis, and this is between the age of 15 to 65 years. So you can imagine what that looks like. Again, the areas that are more prevalent would be Nairobi, and now the areas surrounding Nairobi. Yes.
All right. What did you tell? What would be as an advocate? How would you approach the issue of alcohol, which is now taking 12%? What would you, if you are put in, if I would say, if your organization was lifted to an international level, how would you deal with this particular issue of alcohol? Probably.
Right. Things first is to create awareness. Trying to destigmatize matters mental health, I think, is very, very important. People are not seeking help because of the stigma there is. Even up until this point, you know, someone would prefer to sit at home and struggle and suffer in silence, as opposed to, you know, going to seek help because, you know, mental health is viewed as, you know, madness, right? So first things first is to work on creating awareness as much as we possibly can to help destigmatize this issue of mental illness. The other thing then would be to incorporate families. So if an individual is struggling with a mental illness, you have to work with their family, you have to work with their friends, because when they leave or when they terminate treatment, they will be relying on their family for support. Yeah. That, as far as I'm concerned, is what would really help.
All right. You mentioned in your first point, you mentioned awareness, which is, I believe, is very important. And as an advocate in the field, how are you guys doing? Like, do you feel like you are up to task? Is there room for improvement as far as creating awareness out there about the effects and how people should actually be helped to go back to the normal life? How are you guys faring on? And if there are challenges, what are the challenges, and what can we do in different circles, the media, the government? What can we do in these particular circles to help you achieve even more?
Right. I think as far as creating awareness, there has been government initiatives to, you know, try and educate people out there on, you know, drug abuse and addiction. We also have public campaigns that are running, that are being channeled from, you know, private institutions and governmental institutions. There are also school-based programs that are there for young teenagers to educate them on the risks associated with substance use, and possibly, you know, equip them with life skills that will help them cope positively with the challenges they are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. Ideally, I feel like, of course, we are not yet there really, but I feel like we are headed towards the right direction. What can be done? There's still a lot of stigma associated with mental health. There's a lack of awareness. It is important that, you know, we seek to educate people on some of these issues. Matters addiction, matters substance use, substance abuse can really go a long way.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Before I let you go, I want to give you 1 minute to turn to your camera and talk to that one person who knows they're abusing drugs, but they're like, I'm okay, I have no problem. you know, when it comes to issues of mental health, people are like, mimi niko sawa. This is my thing. I know how to manage it. It doesn't manage me. I'm the one who manages it.
Right.
But we know how that can turn out. So speak to them. Tell them what the truth is as we wind up.
Should you be struggling with any substance abuse or addiction, any mental illness, it's important to remember that you are not alone. Do not feel like you cannot seek help because of the, you know, how will they think of me? How will they see me? There's so many people are struggling with these issues, and you are going to get assistance should you feel that, you know, you need help. Kindly reach out. You are not alone. Should you have a family member who's also struggling with substance abuse, it is important that you support them. approach them from a place of concern rather than a place of condemnation. And it is possible to come out of it. It is possible to recover. We have so many cases of individuals who've recovered and they are doing well. So it is possible. Speak out and you get the necessary assistance.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us in this particular conversation tonight on drug addiction and mental health. You can be sure this is not a conversation that stops. It continues, so we shall be glad to have you back to tell us how we are moving. Are we making steps further?
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation tonight.
Thank you.
All right, that's Charlene Nyawera, clinical psychologist at PsychX. And you can log in, you can go to Google and look at that and see how you can actually partner, because there's always a room for us to partner with these organizations to make sure that we are a drug addiction free country. We take a short break. We'll be right back in just about a bit. Don't go anywhere.
Kenyatta University will hold its 53rd graduation ceremony on Friday, 21st July 2023 at the main campus along Thika Superhighway. KUTV will provide live coverage of the graduation ceremony from 8 a.m. The graduation ceremony will also be streamed live on KUTV, KU website, Lola app, and all KU social media platforms. For more information, please contact the Office of the Registrar Academic on 020-870-3092 or 0786-335-111 or visit the KU website on www.ku.ac.ke. Kenyatta University, transforming higher education, enhancing lives.
Access to knowledge. Solution to unanswered questions.
Guidelines to pursuing your rights and repossessing your property, intellectual or material.
This and more only on Law Matters.
Lola ni programu inayokupa fursa ya kutizama video zozote pindi tu unapokuwa na nafasi. Hadithi za kukupa motisha, drama, maisha ya vyuo vikuu, teknolojia, masuala ya jamii, kuzuru maeneo tofauti, spoti, burudani na zaidi. Pata programu ya Lola sasa kwenye rununu yako kwa yote unayohitaji.
Kipindi hewani ni mitindo ya kipwani. Kama ilivyo kipindi hiki kinahusu nyimbo za tarab, chakacha, midwara, midundiko, bila kusahau mapishi. Ambao ndio uti wa mgongo wa pwani ya Afrika Mashariki.
Jamani swaibu zangu mliopo maskani, hatuonani wenzangu, najua mwanitamani.
Hapa KUTV, nahodha mwendesha chombo cha baharini, yani ua linalonukia na kuvutia waridi tamu.
You are watching KUTV Primetime News with Mutegi K. Martin. Approximately 13 minutes to the top of the hour, we continue with KUTV Primetime News. And Tea Reforms Conference, which is taking place in Kericho County, entered its second day today under the patronage of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. The Farmers-Centered Conference aims at establishing reforms in the sector and pushing for full implementation of the Tea Act. These measures will ensure that farmers reap more benefits from their ventures and make considerable contributions to the economy.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua continued holding the mantle at the Tea Reforms Conference as it entered day 2 in Kericho County. The farmer-centered conference aims at improving tea subsector through implementation of reforms and Tea Act. Cabinet secretaries are among the stakeholders involved in coming up with strategies to curb the tea subsector challenges. While pledging to enforce implementation of tea reforms and Act, Gachagua took a swipe at the Kenya Tea Development Agency for frustrating farmers with poor pay.
We'll have to discuss that the saving on the cost of power must go directly to the farmer. Because from what I've been told last night, anytime you make profit, you make sure you develop a new project to absorb the new profit instead of taking it to the farmer. Yeah? And commissions and all that. So what do you KTDA tutakuwa na mazungumzo? And frank discussion. It cannot be that way. When we get back to Nairobi, we'll get a small team to actualize them. What requires legal reforms will be done. What requires administrative action will be done. And what needs policy will take it to cabinet.
In efforts to reduce production cost, Energy and Petroleum Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirucher has pledged to ensure that in the next 40 days, his ministry will implement energy reforms that will aid KTDA in cutting down on cost, hence more profits, which will also reach the tea farmers.
We will be able to allow KTDA more of the energy as captive power. You use your own captive power, and what is excess, you feed to the grid, and you'll be able to take the power from the grid when you need excess power or when you need more power. And so we'll be publishing those regulations in a short while, maybe in the next 40 days.
Labour and Social Protection Cabinet Secretary Florence Bore has pointed out that private investors have entered the tea subsector but are offering farmers extremely low payment. She has called upon the packaging department to consider reducing their prices.
Private owners of tea factories, the marketers, saw the gap and ran away with it. The small-scale farmers were left on their own.
This 3-day conference has opened a door for tea farmers to engage with stakeholders in efforts to boost the tea subsector and find lasting solutions to their challenges. Lynette Maina, KUTV.
Thank you, Lynette Maina, for that story. Now, in efforts to promote the use of clean and affordable energy, the government intends to encourage the utilization of biofuels. This decision is expected to reduce carbon emissions, and according to Mr. Ali Mohammed, the Special Climate Envoy for Kenya, this decision has numerous benefits associated with the use of such energy fuels.
The government is developing a policy aimed at encouraging the utilization of bioethanol to enhance the availability of clean and affordable energy throughout the country. According to Mr. Ali Mohammed, the Special Committee Envoy to Kenya, this decision is based on the numerous advantages associated with the use of bioethanol.
Bioethanol is now becoming a big use. Over 1 million or so people in our country are currently using bioethanol. And the policy of the government is also to expand the use of bioethanol because of the various benefits it brings, not just for cooking, but to our farmers and the value chain that it brings to the sugar farmers.
During the launch of the Power Up campaign project in Kenya, Mr. Mohammed highlighted the growing popularity of bioethanol in the country, with over 1 million individuals currently utilizing the fuel.
So it is a government priority that electrification becomes an important and priority element for the policy of the government.
In addition, Mr. Mohammed also revealed that the government is actively advocating for the production of green hydrogen, which relies on the utilization of bioethanol as a key component.
Another area of demand that the government is currently pushing is the generation of green hydrogen. It's going to use a lot of, it requires a lot of energy. And so these kind of requirements will help us to enhance our current generation, which is, as you are aware, just above 3,000 megawatts.
These remarks come as a recent global research indicates that the road transport is responsible for 22% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Yvonne Kemuma, KUTV.
Welcome back to this bulletin. This is sports news now, and the National Athletics trials to qualify for the Budapest World Athletics Championship officially kicks off today at the Nyayo National Stadium. The world record holder of 1,500 meters and 5,000 meter races, Faith Kipyegon, continued her red-hot form with another dominant display to emerge triumphant. In the women's race of 5,000 meters, Women's Commonwealth Games champion Mary Moraa set a new national record of 50.38 seconds as she claimed victory in the 400-meter race. The National World Championship trials is expected to finalize tomorrow, as the winners will bag a ticket to represent the nation at the Budapest World Athletics next month. And Safaricom Chapa Dimba football tournament is set to make its return after a 3-year break, with the tournament kicking off in the Western region this Saturday. 441 teams from Kakamega, Bungoma, Vihiga and Busia counties have confirmed their participation, including defending champions Blue Saints and Bishop Jenga Girls. The winners of this year's edition from both the female and the male categories will be awarded with 20 million Kenya shillings. Thank you so much for joining us and being able to be part of this particular broadcast. I'm talking about KUTV Primetime News, where we bring you stories that affect you both locally and internationally. Tomorrow is weekend, or as I would say, I officially launched the weekend tonight. And so tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. we have Mizizi Weekendi, and at 9 p.m. we have Weekend Live, where we will continue to be on the ground to look at what's happening there and bring you the information as it happens. That's it for now. We've come to the close of the conversation. Our sign language interpreter goes by the name EVERLINE LAN'GAT. My name is MUTEGI K. Martin.